Hello, my name is Reverend Nancy Wilson, and I'm the moderator of Metropolitan Community Churches. And what a week it's been this week, as our athletes from around the world are in Sochi in Russia for the Olympics. At the same time, we've been watching on television and hearing about accounts of LGBT people protesting, being beaten, being persecuted just for being who they are, just for speaking out about LGBT rights in their own country. We want to make sure that all of us are alert and aware and responding to this issue as the people of MCC around the world, including, of course, all of our folks in Eastern Europe and in Russia who, in the name of MCC, are carrying the banner for inclusion and for justice. It's also been an interesting week in Uganda, and our activist friends in Uganda have reached out to us and asked us to be sure to communicate with their president, President Museveni, and with Secretary John Kerry in the United States, or our State Department, and to say, for goodness sake, it's so time for the bill in Uganda that for years and years and years has threatened the lives of LGBT people just by being proposed, that will interrupt rights of assembly, that will criminalize LGBT behavior, and even criminalize the support for LGBT rights in their country. It's time for this to stop. It's time for Uganda to stand up for human rights for all of its citizens, including those with HIV/AIDS, including those who are LGBT, including family and friends and allies, and those who speak up from their conscience and for their faith. I want us to be sure to be people who never ignore things that are happening in many different places in the world, even while we may be experiencing our own success in our own different countries. This week, for instance, in the United States, our Attorney General, John Holder, spoke up so powerfully about LGBT same-sex marriage as a civil right. And that, for years we protested and went to, on Valentine's Day, which will be this week, we used to go to those Secretary of State offices and clerk's offices in our various states and ask for a marriage license and be turned down, which in many states in the U.S., of course, in most you still would be turned down. But as we see laws being overturned and overturned everywhere, our Attorney General has gone ahead of the program and said that federal rights for LGBT people will be extended even in states that don't recognize same-sex unions. This is a powerful move on the part of our federal government. It's part of the reason we have a federal government that can give leadership in areas of civil rights when states lag behind. I live in a state in Florida where still same-sex marriage is not recognized, but we are on the move here in Florida, and we're going to make changes in this state through the courts and through various ways through the legislature, and we know that same-sex marriage will come to Florida in just a few short years. This is going to happen all over our country, in no little part because of the work the federal government is doing in setting that standard. We used to say that over 1,000 rights were extended to LGBT couples now because of same-sex marriage, or can be, and we were deprived of those rights for so many years, and it's interesting to see them now coming to the forefront, where in all the different ways, whether it's the right of a spouse not to testify against another spouse, whether it is in relationship to immigration or Social Security, or so many other different kinds of circumstances in which people find themselves. I'm grateful for the great progress and the rapid progress that's happening in the United States. Sometimes I would wish, as would others, that it would not be so piecemeal, that there would be something that would so definitively say that marriage is a right for every single person, no matter where you live in the United States and in the world. We also look forward to those days in Russia and places where there will not be a denial of basic human rights for LGBT people, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion and faith, the freedom to be who you are without being threatened or molested or bothered or beaten or even murdered. I know that we live in great times, that God is using us, MCC, that God is using our movements around the world to bring wonderful and enormous change. I'm grateful for our staff around the world, for those of us who are struggling for human rights in so many different countries, in more than 40 countries. And I know that God is going to bless us as we continue to speak the truth, and as we continue to stand up for the truth and offer our lives for that very truth. Thank you.